Welcome everybody to the East Boston Resiliency Assembly on this Saturday, November 14th. It's very bright and sunny out there. We're very glad to have you. Thank you for taking your time on this busy day to both listen and to share ideas on climate change challenges and how we as a community might personally and collectively respond in the event of a storm-related catastrophe, though it could be COVID-related as well. My name is Phil Giffey. I work at NOAA. Very fortunate to be here. To say the least, these have not been easy days for anyone, especially in East Boston and Chelsea, where COVID has been such a scourge and remains so and will continue to be so through the winter, we're hearing. The virus has dominated our attention and claimed the lives of many of our neighbors and more to come. We've seen the toll it has exacted on our bodies and our spirits, jobs lost, rampant food insecurity, the inability to pay bills or for housing, children out of school and small businesses closed. Coupled with the recently concluded national election, these twin perils have absorbed our attention and clutched our emotions like nothing else in memory. Our attentions have of necessity been diverted to these life-threatening and socially undermining challenges. This moment hurts, and we can't even give each other a comforting hug, much less an embrace. We could perhaps virtually do that right now. Nevertheless, life does go on. With the new administration in Washington, we can begin to piece together a more effective response to this virus and the economy as well, and to the ever-present threat of climate change, which hasn't waited for any COVID or administration change. And aren't we all glad climate is finally becoming, again, a national priority? To the point, what does Resiliency Assembly actually mean? As you may know, NOAA has been hosting climate educationals that began right after Superstorm Sandy in 2012. The first one was held at the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center, from whom you'll hear later. As you know, our wonderfully diverse neighborhood is a peninsular landmass that makes East Boston and Chelsea particularly vulnerable to sea level rise events such as hurricanes, which are increasing in regularity and intensity and which cause extreme flooding, such as the two bombogenesis floods in 2018. There's no time now to talk about extreme temperature, which takes more lives than the economic damage caused by sea level rise, but that will be for another day. But let us not forget extreme temperature. Climate change dangers are not just from the sea. Former City Councilor Sal Lamantina will tell you he was surprised to find his home on Orient Heights damaged by a severe microstorm about 4 years ago. Who would have thought that Orient Heights was subject to flooding? However, the inevitable future storm surges will be worse than any intense thunderstorm. So we do need to be prepared in order to be resilient, personally and as a community. Today, we will share flood projections which East Boston might experience during future storm surges. The one we will share with you in a video shortly, later together discuss, is the 2018 bombogenesis event as if it were to occur in 2030 and no green or gray infrastructure had yet been built along Border Street or around Maverick Square. We know these surges will slice through East Boston and create pockets of isolation throughout our neighborhood. In the coming hour, the video will dramatize again for you what Central Square will look like, what happens to the tunnels, and Maverick Square, which might be spared at that particular time. In any case, why is NOAA doing this? It's a good question. After our previous climate events, residents often came up to us and says, what do I do in an emergency? Where does my family go? What happens in my school? My ability to get to work, how will I get out of here, and what should I take with me? We know that local agencies such as District 7 Police, our fire department, and of course our health center, nationally renowned health center, will respond as they always do, but few of us know what will actually happen in the case of an emergency of this magnitude. A local activist, Chris Markey, once commented that the escape route he found took him up Bennington Street, into Winthrop, into Revere Beach. That is, oncoming into rising seas, not exactly a safe harbor route to take one's family. Since we didn't have an answer to these important questions, we decided to find out what residents knew of climate change, were they prepared, and in the event of a storm surge, from whom did they receive trusted information in a bilingual way as well. So with a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, thank you very much, and in tandem with trained health and climate researchers from New York University, our terrific youth crew and climate delegates, bilingual climate delegates, conducted a neighborhood survey last year of nearly 300 East Boston persons. Dr. David Abramson and his team from NYU analyzed all that data, and they will share that with us shortly. Let me describe some of our objectives for the day, as well as some of the participants who will lead us during the assembly. We'll start with a couple things. One, providing opportunities for community residents to learn about community preparedness, emergency preparedness, and response planning, and to be actively engaged in household and community readiness activities. Two, fostering systems thinking and collective action by posing an extreme weather climate scenario event to the attendees, that is you guys. Three, advancing climate discussions with citywide agencies such as BDPA, DMD, the Office of Emergency Management, Boston Public Health Commission, and of course, the city's Environment Department with whom we work very closely. Four, we're building the case for an all hazards East Boston Resilience Network, but much more on this and in discussions later. In order to do this well, we've gathered some very experienced people to guide us through this day, and it's my pleasure to introduce some of them now in a brief way. Our keynote speaker, you'll meet shortly, Rich Serino, is a distinguished senior fellow at Harvard University's National Preparedness Leadership Initiative, and he's former deputy director of FEMA under President Obama, and some might know him as the former chief of Boston's EMS. Rich also knew East Boston and got his start here, as he will describe. Robin Peach, who has been our internal project manager for this initiative funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, has been serving as our resiliency officer also for several years. Robin used to work at Massport and knows resiliency planning well. Dr. David Abramson and his able aide, Alexis Mirjanov of NYU, who've done a spectacular job organizing all sorts of data and the details of this kind of work, will be here as well and present to you. I think of them as sort of our disaster people because they know what happened in Joplin, Missouri, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Maria down in Puerto Rico, and in Harvey, I think in Houston. They know what they're talking about. You'll want to hear what they have to say. They'll be followed by Dr. Jackie Fantes, Chief Medical Officer at East Boston Neighborhood Health Center, and her colleague, Dr. Michael Mancusi, Vice President and Chief Behavioral Officer of the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center, who can say enough about all the great work they've done trying to keep our neighborhood safe, clean, and moving ahead in these days of COVID. And unfortunately, much more of that to come. We need to work even more closely with them than we have in the past couple of months. I'm also delighted to welcome two essential agencies in the city, Boston's Office of Emergency Management and Boston's Public Health Commission, OEM, is represented by Mr. Tyrone Owens, Director of Communications, and the Health Commission is represented by Nancy Smith, who is very well known in these parts and is a friend to everyone she graciously meets and is lucky enough to get a hug from. They will co-present on community and personal preparedness. I want to thank my teammates, Melinda Vega and her terrific youth crew, for their wonderful work you haven't seen yet and behind the scenes organizing for this particular event and the survey they were about to share with you. They'll be also working with Manlio Mendez, NOAA's senior organizer, who was just given an award by Representative Adrian Madro in the legislature in Massachusetts for the great work he does organizing in our neighborhood. Lastly, Dr. Paul Kirshen of UMass, who organized the storm surge video and some slides you'll be anxious to see. Paul has always been a strong and vital advocate on behalf of East Boston and a great friend of NOAA. We think of Paul as our science guy. You'll want to see what he has to share with you very shortly. It's very dramatic. I think I want to turn it over now to David Abramson, Dr. David Abramson, who is going to do a poll. David, it's back to you.